So we are seeking to homeschool for outside the box learning, and here are some of the things you need to scaffold you for success and provide the scaffolding your kids need to have success. So our goals are we want to build as our little hero there is showing. That includes a solid academic foundation, building a love of learning, fostering habits of mind and strength of character, finding whole person balance for yourself and helping your student learn what that means, discovering the uniqueness of each of your kids, and embracing that and helping them to embrace that. All of those things go together to build lifelong success. So we want to focus on the core solid academic skills, and we're going to come back to that chart to address these in a minute. So things like listening and speaking, phonological awareness, phonics, fluency, vocabulary, reading comprehension, spelling, handwriting, grammar, usage, mechanics, composition, math, science, social studies, all that. It's important. We're going to come back to it. You also want to foster a love of learning. So we got to keep that balancing act between the skills and making sure they get a chance to be exposed to a variety of areas and developing a true just love, enjoyment of learning rather than school being something that they hate and don't look forward to. So I want you to think about, I'm going to back up here for a second. Since we're taking stock, a solid foundation. Jot each of these words down. The academics, the academic foundation, love of learning, habits of mind, strengths of character, whole person balance, embracing the uniqueness. Those 5 areas, just jot those down. And as I go back through each of the slides that go into just a little bit more on them, I want you to think about and just jot. I want you to make a column for each of your kids and how are you doing. Just make a note for yourself. Maybe let's go with a scale of 1 to 10. 10 is I am doing fabulous with this. We're doing awesome. I am totally on top of this. 1 is never thought about it before today. This is the first time I've ever even thought about this idea. I thought about it and I know it's not going well at all. So I go through these next couple slides, I want you to assess in those 5 areas, just briefly for yourself. Take stock of where you are. In all of what we do in this session with taking stock, I want you to do so without judgment. Don't judge yourself what should or shouldn't be. Just note what is. So, building those solid core academic skills. We'll get into the details of the specifics in a few minutes, but how are we doing with each of your kids on building their solid core academics? Jot that for yourself. Again, not the details of which things, but in general, how are we doing on building the solid core academic skills? Okay. How are we doing on fostering a love of learning? So not being so focused on the skills and the drill and the practice that we miss out on just developing that love of learning. How are we doing on that? Again, think about each of your kids. How is that going for each of them? The next core area is developing habits of mind. Hello, I'm back. So, my computer froze up completely. Sorry about that. You know, things happen. So I'm going to re-screen share, although just give me a second. So everything froze up for you too. Okay, well, my PowerPoint froze, everything froze. So I don't know if we're all, yeah, we are here. Okay, I need to pull my PowerPoint back up because it totally crashed on me. And then I'll screen share again. Oh, so it froze for everybody. Okay, well, and that might have happened because your presenter, it may well have kicked you out because I'm the host, and if I get kicked out, that may totally stall everything for the presentation. So, you know, these things happen. All right. Interesting. So, Kelly, you're mentioning same as Shannon. I don't even see Shannon's comment as having come through on my end yet. So, fascinating. Let me see. I need to get back to where I was in my PowerPoint. You know, we just have to flex when when technology does something, we just go with it. So you were assessing yourself on how things were going, and going back to this view. Oh, okay. I have to, in order to do this, I've got to pop through a whole bunch of stuff. Just a sec. Come on. All right. I was hoping this wouldn't happen. I wouldn't have to go back through all this again, but. Sorry for the delay here. I've done whole presentations at conferences without the PowerPoint I intended to use for the presentation. So if I have to, I can do those things. But it's really nice to have I don't have PowerPoint for the whole day. I've got certain sessions. The first 3 sessions, I have more of a PowerPoint prepared. The others are much more so you doing some things that I'm going to just guide you through some things. And I'll screen share some other elements. But we're almost there. I'm almost back to where I need to be. Okay. So, thank you for your patience. Let me re-screen share. All right. So I had just asked you to think about how you were doing on your solid core academic skills, fostering a love of learning, and building habits of mind and strength. The 4th key area that I wanted you to think about, oops, one more, back one more, is balance. how are you doing on helping with the whole person well-being balanced with the academics? And I'm going to address this with another full slide in a few minutes to talk about those different aspects of whole person well-being, but there's just kind of a quick general check. A couple notes for you as well. Physical balance helps reset the vestibular system, helps reconnect the left and the right hemisphere. So if your kids are having a tough time with something, I would strongly encourage you to take a break, physical break, not just go play a game on the computer. Doing something else on the computer isn't the kind of break we need. We need to get up, we need to be physically active. It might be something as simple, the physical activity might be as simple as getting a drink, going to the bathroom, and stretching. That's maybe all it is. Balance on one foot. Doesn't matter which foot, doesn't matter how long you're balancing on one foot, balance on the other foot. If you do any sort of karate or yoga or tai chi or anything like that, those kind of activities, if you do any sort of brain gym, all of those are good things. You can lay out a rope along the floor and just walk along it. You can do a simple balance game that can just be something like a mini trampoline or a quick bike ride around the block. All of those things are things that are challenging the balance that help reset the system. Some of your kids would do well from spending at least part of their day sitting on an exercise ball or one of those little cushions that has kind of like an exercise ball, but just like a little cushion that, because it's constantly challenging their balance. I had one mom come up to me after a homeschool convention the next year, actually a different convention than I've met her at the previous year. But she came up to me and she said, you know that balance trick you taught me? She said that has worked like every time for my daughter. Now, I'm not saying it's going to work every time for your kid, but she said it has worked so well for us. When we are just kind of slightly off, or we're going into a subject that we know to be a slightly more challenging subject, just a quick balance break has made the world of difference for them. So think about that. So that's a physical balance aspect that helps with the whole balance. Do build in breaks throughout your day, like every 15 to 40 minutes, something like that. Take at least a 5-minute break, 5-10-minute break. Frequent 5-10-minute breaks are, and depending on your kid, depending on their needs, it might be every 15 minutes, it might be every 40-45 minutes, but take breaks. You're going to get far more done if you do. And if you stop before they hit the wall, stop before we hit the wall. I'm sure, since many of you have kids who struggle, maybe even if you don't, you've had the experience of tears in your homeschool. Whether that's you or the kid, that it happens. And even if they're not at the tears stage, but they're at the just hitting a wall and can't move forward, it's so common that we just try to push through it. Or we try, okay, let's just quick finish this, honey. And, we've only got 2 more problems left. Let's push through together. Well, once they're at that stage, it is counterproductive to try to keep pushing. Because once our brainstem is the part that controls our emotions, once it's taken over and we're in emotional state, parent or child, we cannot activate and access the higher thinking parts of our brain. It's kind of like, I heard somebody talk about it being like the brainstem emotional side is like the downstairs of your house, which is developed kind of naturally. It's something that's developed from the beginning. Whereas our upstairs brain, which is our prefrontal cortex, is something that really is continual development, and there's a significant amount of development that happens up through age 25 in that. And it's like when we go into brainstem mode, it's like the amygdala turns off and puts a kid gate up at the bottom of the stairs to get into your upstairs brain. And when we're in that emotional mode, we can't get to the higher thinking. And so if we're going to keep trying to push through on a concept, we're going to just get a little bit more done, or we're going to try to talk to them about why they should do this or that or whatever. Until you get the brain calmed down, until you get the emotional side of the brain calmed down, it's going to be worthless. All of that talking, all of that reasoning, all of that trying to help them with a concept and just pushing through one more thing, their thinking part of their brain can't access until we address and meet them at the emotional side and help them with, it seems like you're feeling frustrated right now. Put your arm around them, or whatever it would be. We have to acknowledge and meet them at the emotional side before we can move forward with the thinking. Just that principle alone has helped many, many families. Okay. So whole person well-being. We want to, the final of these 5 core goals that I've laid out for you is we want to help them embrace their uniqueness as an individual. Each of them has different talents, gifts, passions, interests, strengths, and weaknesses. Now notice all those things that I mentioned, most of them are positives. We do have to address the weaknesses. And since Wings to Soar helps kids who are outside the box kids, many of whom are struggling learners, we do a lot with that. We want to make sure to take all of this into account. I'm going to go into more about this embracing the uniqueness in the next session, where we're going to talk about teaching all kinds of learners. But I want to note it here. And again, as we're taking stock, make a note. How do you feel like you're doing about embracing the uniqueness of each of your children? And maybe you haven't fully come to grasp of what that means even yet. That's what we're going to do in the next session, of help you realize what that profile looks like. But think about how you're doing on embracing uniqueness. So all of this is with the goal of helping them become successful startup adults. We want to help them flourish and thrive. That's, of course, the goal that we're trying to achieve. So all of those areas that we're addressing, the solid academic skills, the love of learning, the habits of mind and strengths of character, the whole person well-being, and embracing who they are as an individual, are all the key building blocks that go together to help them become the successful startup adults you're trying to help them grow into. So we're taking stock. I'm going to skip through this really fast, just showing you where we are in the cycle of what we're doing. So throughout the year, if you're doing any of the success coaching stuff with us, any of the group class coaching, any of the dyslexia intensive, we're going to be using this Plan, Do, Check, Act. And this is something Mrs. Greaves is going to go into more this afternoon. But this step, you most likely at this point have had some sort of plan of what you're doing with your homeschooling. And you've started doing it either this year or in previous years, or maybe you're brand new to homeschooling, you've never done any of this before, and the plan that I've helped you create is all you know at this point, and you haven't really gotten started yet. Okay, we have a plan. Then the process, then you need to start doing it. You probably have already been doing much of it. You're already doing in that you're a mom, and you've already been parenting your child. So you already are doing something. And you've been involved in their education up until this point, whether it's homeschooling or supporting them in another situation. You've been teaching them. So we've been doing. What we're doing now is we're at this check stage. We're checking how are things going? How's my plan working? How's what we've been doing happening? We're going to check on that. That's what we're doing during this session. And then you need to take action on whatever you find. And that's part of what we're going to then help you with this afternoon, is how to make a plan to act on what we've learned. But I wanted to lay the foundation of the taking stock where we are first. So we're doing a check-in, and then we'll help you learn how to act on that later. Sorry, I just had to ask my husband if I could not do something on the computer right now because I'm having trouble with bandwidth here. Had to kick him off. All right. So here's the next aspect that I said I was going to go in a little more depth of helping you think about the whole person well-being. So there are 4 key aspects here that we need to take stock on. One is physical. How are we doing? This is for you as well as for you in managing your kids in this. And this is both how we're doing right now, and these are things you need to be thinking about as time goes on. How are we doing with making sure we have wholesome, well-balanced food? We're not having a bunch of sugar all the time, not a ton of refined carbs. You know, not saying you can't have some of those things, but if you have too much of it, it makes a huge difference. So how are we doing on wholesome, well-balanced food? Making sure there's a good amount of physical activity built into both your life as well as your kids. We all know these are important things for our kids. We all need reminders. And rest. I right now have not been doing so good on any of the 3 of those. I need to do more on that. I mean, all 3 of those I need to take a little bit better charge of. I will be functioning much better the rest of my whole person well-being if I get those under control. I have not been very well balanced lately, and I need to address that. But this is an aspect we all have to continually take stock of. Emotional. We need to think about that whole balance issue, the balance in all areas. We need to embrace the full range of emotions. Heather recommended to me after she went and saw Inside Out that I go see it, and I agreed with her. I should see it. I went to see it with Shannon, and then I also went again with one of my other good friends. So I've gone twice now. Great movie. If you haven't seen Inside Out, very much recommend it. It's going to mean far more to you as a parent than it will to your kids. There are layers, as any Pixar film does. They do layers for the young ones as well as for the adults. But highly recommend it. And its big takeaway is all of the emotions have a role and a place, and we need to help embrace and help our kids embrace the full range of that. And that's huge. I tried to keep a happy face in high school and tried to put on having it all together. And if I had been taught and known that you know what, you're gonna feel sad sometimes, you're gonna acknowledge it, feel it, and work with it, as opposed to trying to just put it all like it's supposed to all be perfect, would have made a huge difference. And apparently there could be something else there that I didn't use. Purpose, which also goes along with your spiritual side, whatever that would be. We're going to talk about purpose a little bit more later, whatever that means to you, based on your core values. So your homeschooling, your whole life, if it's based on a core purpose, you've been intentional about, being intentional about thinking about what your values are and building your vision and purpose statement out of those values, which often relates to our whatever our own spiritual center is. It goes a long ways. And then the academics. That's important. That's our mental. So the core skills, reading and language arts, the math, and then the breadth, the whole breadth of the curricular areas and all the different things we want to expose them to. We got to focus on core skills and get those skills, but we also want to keep exposing them to the breadth of what's out there. So those are different aspects that are a balance of the whole person well-being that we need to continually reassess. How are we doing? Oh, back to balance again. I've already talked about this, so I'm not going to, I forgot that I put the slide in here twice, but this is huge. So what do we need to scaffold for success? Well, remember that most of the kids are not a grade level package. And if you're enrolled in Wings to Soar, pretty much guaranteed they're not. A 3 to 5 year span of skill within the child is normal. Maybe even within their English language arts. So that's why we assess to find each student's just right level in each skill-based subject area. So that's where we start where they are. So you've already done much of that process with us. You need to continue. It's a continual process. And the programs we work with have that built in. So then we can start where they are and fill in any skill gaps. So we need to back down to their just right level to fill in any skill gaps, but bump up the time and intensity. Very commonly, I hear from homeschool moms that when their kids having struggle, that their tendency is to back away rather than to move towards what it is, because we don't want to shut the kid down. We don't want them to hate the whatever it is and the stress of trying to move towards their struggle area. But if we can back down to where they actually are, which is what we do here at Wings to Soar, and we bump up the time and intensity of working on the skill at a success level, we get so much further. And one of the ways we bump up that time and intensity is we come at things from multiple different angles. So we come at it from a little bit of time in each of several different programs. That's why we do that, because we can get a lot more time focusing on the skills and a lot more reinforcement if we come at it from a few different programs than we could if we had just one thing we were doing with it, because they shut down on us if we're doing one thing. This is one of those principles that I will tell you over and over and over. You're teaching a child, not a curriculum. You need to allow your curriculum to be your guide and your servant, not your taskmaster. You need to go as slow as your children need, but as fast as they're ready. Each of them, always. Now that's not as slow as they might drag their feet, and it's not as fast as Susie's super homeschooler, or as fast as Aunt Jane thinks we should be going. But as fast as they're ready in each area. All right, few key homeschool success points. Homeschooling does provide a lot of freedom, but we do need to be intentional. So here's a couple more things for you to think about. How am I doing? Getting my day started. There's no bus in homeschooling. But it tends to go better if we're intentional about how we start off our day. That might be easing into it with an activity they really enjoy. That can be very helpful for some kids to start with something they enjoy. Maybe it's a little bit of time to work on some art or to build something or start with a subject they really like. For some, they just need to start with the hardest thing and get it over with. It just depends on the kid. But whatever it is, and then also being intentional about starting your day also includes getting up, morning routines, breakfast, devotions if you do that, or whatever it is. Whatever it is, have a plan and be intentional. Don't let it just be, I'm not a particularly morning person, but I find that if I'm intentional about being consistent about when I start my day and how I start my day, whenever that is, things go much more smoothly. And it's much less likely, if you have been intentional about your morning routine, that the day just gets away from you and you haven't gotten around to doing much of anything. So decide when you're going to start your day, back plan from there so that you have built in enough time. Because I don't particularly like mornings, I used to try to just, get up 20 minutes before I needed to do whatever I was going to do. But I've learned that I do better if I have about an hour before I need to be on for whatever it is to ease into my day. I use a sun alarm to help me wake up gradually. I do some surfing on Facebook and things like that just to ease into my day. Other specific things that I have built into my morning routine. But I know about that hour built in, it goes more smoothly for me. Whatever that is for you. Now, how are you doing on not shortchanging the academics? Now, academics don't have to be all book work, computer work, but we need to make sure we spend enough intentional, focused time on academic learning. Sometimes we get so into all the wonderful activities we have available to us as a homeschooler that we get involved in all of the possibilities that we are never home. And we're never actually working, not never, of course, but we're gone and doing other things too much and not having enough time for the academic plan. How are you doing on making sure you build in frequent activity breaks? Has that been something you've been intentional about and chosen to do previously or not? And is that something you need to do more? Think about that. And do we have time built in for interest exploration, whether that's through an activity outside the house or whether that's through just personal time to work on something? We do need to build in time to explore new interests and hone skills in the current interest areas. Those are important. That's part of a well-balanced homeschool day. Oops. Just want to check in here for a sec. All right. Back over here. All right. Don't try to recreate school at home. When you're first coming home to homeschool, it's so tempting to think I need to be the sage on the stage and I need to recreate a classroom. And it can be useful to have a homeschool room if you can. I'm not saying don't have a school room, but I'm saying don't feel like you need to recreate what school was doing, because much of how school works in the public school or in private school is based on having a classroom full of 25 kids. And just because they do a bunch of worksheets and textbooks and tests doesn't mean that's the best, and lectures and things, doesn't mean that's the best way to learn. We know that there are problems with our nation's education system. So don't just try to recreate what wasn't working. So a couple things just to think about curriculum here. So we're going to go through each of the areas on that chart, but reading includes phonological awareness, phonics, fluency, comprehension, vocabulary. Again, if we go through that chart together in just a minute, we're going to address how intentional are we being with each of these, and do I have something that addresses it, or have I just been saying, oh, we'll just read together, and I haven't done anything to be actually focused on comprehension skill development or intentionally working on building vocabulary. We'll just pick it up. For some kids that works, but for most, something intentional is important. Writing, related composition, grammar, usage, mechanics, spelling, and handwriting. Math, are we thinking about making sure we understand the conceptual level, math facts, and the processes? Far too often we focus on the process, the steps of problems, the algorithms, and the facts, and we forget to make sure we have a really solid conceptual foundation built. Social studies, sometimes all we do is history and we don't think about these other aspects. You don't have to do something formal with government and economics at young ages, but talking about how those things play into the history and connecting it is really important. So again, whatever you're doing there. And then science, again, concepts. Will include just real world nature study, taking time to answer real world questions that they have. If they ask you a question that has 30 seconds worth of interest, you might be able to stretch the answer to about a 3-minute answer, maybe. But if you respond to a 30-second question with a 3-week unit, that doesn't go over so well. They learn not to ask questions. But if you respond to something where they really had the interest to dive into it at a 3-week unit level with a 30-second answer, that also teaches them asking questions isn't useful, because mom's not really going to listen anyhow. So you may or may not be able to do whatever it is, whatever level right now. You might not know the answer, but maybe develop a question notebook. You jot down what their questions are and demonstrate that it's, we don't have time to look that up right now, honey, but let's go ahead and write that down, and a little bit later, let's go ahead and look that up together. You don't have to know all the answers. You have to model how to find the answers, whether that's going to the library, looking it up on the internet, asking somebody who might know. That's an important part of learning about our world. That's an important part of science. And then make sure you're doing something hands-on with science. Online curriculum is great for providing the concepts, helping to find answers for some of those real-world questions, but it does not substitute for doing hands-on. We're going to build virtual stuff with us, but again, get experiment books, find experiments on the internet to supplement. They need to do more of that. And all right, working on it. Just a sec. Pulling up a different screen, and I'll screen share again. So I'm going to pull up that skills and curriculum sheet. I'm going to talk to you about how it works. I'm not necessarily going to go through in total detail every last piece on here, but I'm going to talk to you about how it works, and I want you to think about, and maybe I will take a minute here, but so I'll screen share if you don't happen to have it in front of you. But how I'm going to recommend we use this is have your curriculum skills chart in front of you, either one copy for each of your kids and make notes for about each of them, or, yeah, everything froze for a minute there, sorry. So I'm going to share this curriculum skills chart. I would recommend having, if you can, having your chart in front of you, and either one for the whole family, and you just use initials to note things, which kids are doing what, and if you've got something else that's addressing it that's not Wings to Soar programs, if you need, I hadn't thought about that, maybe I need to address that, you might just put kids' initials on the chart, and, hey, got it's covered with a star, ooh, frowny face, or something like that. Some notation to yourself, or you do a separate chart for each of your kids. It's totally up to you. So what I'm going to talk about here, oh, different screen. Okay. So I've laid out pretty much all the major skill areas that you need to think about covering. And the skill age at which, like the skill level age, the functional level, not that each of the programs is addressing, not the kids' age level. So phonological and phonemic awareness. Lexia addresses that at the kindergarten to second grade level. If you're doing Lexia strategies, it would be addressed back in strategies 1. Reading Horizons also does a good job of addressing this. Again, kindergarten, first grade kind of level, but that program is designed for kids who are functioning at a K3 level. Elevate is designed for older kids. K3 is, Reading Horizons Discovery is designed for those who are actually in the K3 age range. Fast Forward does, if there's significant phonological phonemic awareness issues, being able to distinguish and manipulate sounds within words. Fast Forward, if we've got a significant challenge there, especially if we're also dealing with dyslexia and auditory processing we maybe incorporate Fast Forward into your plan. That's a more intensive program. I shared with you last week a talk I had done about phonological and phonemic awareness, and as well as a link to a PDF of some exercise I created for you to just do offline with your students. If you've got a young one, highly recommend going through that. If you've got an older struggler, recommend going through those at least to just check and see, do they have the skills? If you've got a young one or a struggler, I would recommend spending maybe 5 minutes a day working on those. So that's just a resource I shared with you, provided for you. For most kids who are not particularly struggling, what's in Lexia will be perfectly adequate for addressing this. If we've added in the Reading Horizons, which is like a medium intensity intervention, it will work on it further. And if we needed more intensive intervention, we've added Fast Forward in for that. Phonics, we've got a number of different aspects. Again, Lexia is our core, and phonics is a focus. Okay, that should actually say probably K4, but so that's our core foundational program for all of our core reading for most of our kids. Nessie provides additional fun phonics-based reading and spelling practice. Headsprout, early reading, focuses on short phonics-based skill episode lessons. Many of the kids really like at the K2 level, and then it shifts into comprehension skills at the 2nd to 4th grade level, as well as providing Sprout stories for some additional comprehension practice. Reading Horizons and Fast Forward both also help address those K3 phonics skills as well. I've created Wings to Soar, a program I wrote based out of my Orton Gillingham experience, Wings to Soar Kindergarten, that I have some additional phonics-based support there. Structural analysis and word parts, so things like word roots, prefixes, suffixes. Lexia has a nice module on that that starts in about the 3rd grade level. Some of that is built in at the later end of the Reading Horizons. Fast Forward has some exercises once you get into the reading levels of Fast Forward that address that. Word Build is a vocabulary program that's based entirely on these word parts and how word parts go together. IXL also, at the 2nd to 12th grade level, has a lot of practice exercises that address some of that, as well as a number that address some vocabulary skills, as well as a lot with grammar usage and mechanics. Vocabulary, so these first few skills here in the Lexia, these are the core reading skills. So the reason I choose Lexia as our core for most of you is because it does a great job of addressing all of those core reading skills that are most essential that I had shown you on that earlier slide. So it addresses vocabulary for some kids. The amount that's being addressed in Lexia is totally fine, and that's perfectly adequate. For some, they're also doing MobyMax vocabulary, which introduces a few new words a day and continues to reinforce and practice, but not on a deep level, just more on a, hey, these are the words that they don't know exposure level. There's some vocabulary built into Reading Horizons. It's not its main focus, but there's a little bit there. Reading Plus focuses on reading fluency and comprehension, but it also has a strong vocabulary component. Wordly Wise is a strong vocabulary program, which also has a comprehension practice component. Word Built also addresses vocabulary, but again, it's focusing on the word part based. If you want something fun to practice the word parts, something that didn't make it onto my chart was a game called Rummy Roots. My dad and I have recommended that for years. It's just another fun something to work on, practicing Greek and Latin word parts. Fluency. So fluency is being able to read confidently, smoothly, independently. So that's addressed in Lexia. MobyMax, like the K first grade level, there's a new, if it's out, I'm not sure if it's out or it's about to be out, a new early reading and early reading, which is early stories, and early words is a fluency-based piece. Reading Horizons builds that in during the library practice. Reading Plus, that's its main focus, is helping building fluency and stamina in a silent reading for older kids. But it also has a strong comprehension and vocabulary component. Again, I want you to be noting for yourself on your chart. And if you don't do it now, maybe you do it later. It's fine if I'm going too fast and there's too much to cover to go go slow. If you don't do it now, do this later. Go through and make a note, maybe circling the program, writing the initials by it. Which components are we using? And if you're not using these programs with us, I'm not trying to say you need to. I'm trying to say, what are you doing to address them? So if you haven't made a note of addressing any of the things and your kid's at that skill level and needs that, and you haven't done anything about it, you can talk to me and we'll talk about what we can add in. You have a chart to know what the options are. But if you're not doing, and you're choosing not to, and you're choosing not to do something about it intentionally, that's fine. But know that you're making an intentional choice to not include a skill rather than just by default not doing it. So just want to make sure you're addressing that for yourself. And so how I'm intending you use this chart to check for yourself is, what am I doing? Which components are we doing? What is it needing in our plan? And if I'm not doing these, what else am I doing to address it? Or am I intentionally choosing not to? Because the kid doesn't need it, because it's not a priority right now, whatever that may be. So there's two different aspects of comprehension. One is building the comprehension skills, things like learning, how do I do inference? How do I address finding the main idea? Summary skills, things like that. And the other aspect is comprehension practice, just practicing comprehension skills. So Lexia teaches some good comprehension skills. Headsprout, the reading comprehension goes from about mid-second grade to mid-fourth grade level skills. It specifically, there's 50 lessons that specifically address comprehension skills. In MobyMax, there's reading stories, which is just comprehension practice. And there's literature skills and informational skills, and those are skill building practice lessons. There's some comprehension skill work built into Fast Forward once you get into the reading levels. Comprehension practice, the Sprout stories and Headsprout help with that. RazKids has the comprehension checks in RazKids aren't fantastic, but they do address all of the different skills. It's more for helping them have a range of a library to pick books that they're interested in to read for enjoyment. And even if they can't read them themselves, that they can have audio support from in the books in the library to be building their enjoyment. That's about the only piece that's going to be enjoyment reading in the curriculum we have, but think about building that in a way to help them enjoy reading. Reading Horizons builds in some comprehension practice in the library. Reading Plus definitely builds in a strong amount of comprehension practice. Whereas Wordly Wise, the focus is on vocabulary, there is also a application passage where they need to apply their vocabulary words in the context of a passage and doing some comprehension work. Spelling. So Nessie has a whole strand of spelling practice and practicing phonetic spelling words. They do have some tricky words lessons. Reading Horizons will definitely build that phonetic-based spelling. If you're doing our Wings to Soar spelling, we deliver that to you in Vocabulary and Spelling City. I also would highly recommend then for the spelling rule breakers and outlaws. Rule breakers are words that truly break the rules. Outlaws are a small group of words that break the rules together. That's my definition. Doing the multisensory, the daily 5 multisensory practice. If it's something you, to practice tricky words, rule breakers, outlaws, sight words, whatever you want to call them, that they're encountering in their different programs or the ones in my spelling program, do the daily practice there. I talk about in one of those talks I gave you a link to last week, the multisensory practice, and what I'm talking about there, my suggestions for it. Handwriting. If you're doing Vocabulary and Spelling City, you can print out handwriting worksheets in print or cursive at 3 different sizes to go along with your lists in Vocabulary and Spelling City. I didn't put that on there, I should. And then I also created some handwriting worksheets to go along with our Wings to Soar spelling as well as our Wings to Soar kindergarten, that I created some additional handwriting worksheets that I can share in a PDF if we're needing those. Grammar usage mechanics, there's an age-appropriate amount built into Reading Horizons. Otherwise, some of these other programs do, in fact, like MobyMax actually has some of that starting as young as kindergarten. I don't think we need to use it until we're at least at 2nd grade skills. Same thing, Writes has something starting as 1st grade. I don't think we need to use it until we're in 2nd grade skills. IXL starts that component in 2nd grade and has a strong track there for practicing those skills. I also have, those of you who are doing spelling with me, a commonly confused words. It's a whole Google Drive folder full of practice sheets on commonly confused words. I had my dad create those for me, so there's tons of them there. Some of you are using Writes, which is some, just like a Dailygram, if you're familiar with Dailygrams, just a little half-page practice to work on solidifying the grammar usage mechanics skills. And if you're in any of our group classes or in our writing coaching, we use Peg Writing extensively, and it provides a lot of feedback as well as short instructional lessons on grammar usage mechanics. Written composition. MobyMax has a new, in the early stories, there's a writing strand for the young ones, and then there's writing workshop in there with skill-based lessons starting at about 3rd grade level. Unless you've done a lot of extensive writing work, most of our kids should probably start back at that 3rd grade level, because what they're calling 3rd grade these days is way beyond what most of us would expect. Reading Plus has some composition, but it's really more application. So it's not really composition instruction, it's more application of writing about what they're reading. Writing A to Z is a resource we have available. If you're doing the Kids A to Z, which is where the Head Sprout and Res kids are, we have option for some lessons are online, some of these are offline things. And studies think there's some application of writing skills, not much teaching the writing skills, but applied based on the literature and composition we're talking about. And if you're doing the paragraphs to essays or the essay writing course with us, in any of your variations, we use Apex to teach, using their English Foundations course to teach those skills. And in IXL, they've just added their 9th to 12th grade track this year, and it includes some written composition lessons. Math, 4 major components to think about. One is math to conceptual level, procedural level, that's the steps, the facts, and then application of math. So MobyMax has a number sense strand. It's about K to 2nd grade skills in the conceptual. Lots of short practice lessons. Many of our elementary families are using MobyMax Math for short instructional, short practice sessions. There's also a fact master practice, which we can change the speed, by the way, of how quickly they present the facts to the kids if they need them. Third grade level to pre-calculus level, Alex Math does a good job for many of our families. IXL provides additional practice for pre-K all the way up to pre-calc. ScoopGrid provides extra practice. But on the conceptual level, if your kid's having trouble grasping the concepts, other than the number sense strand in MobyMax, I don't have anything great to offer you right now. I'll just be honest. I've tried to get a hold of ST Math, which you can get through Homeschool Buyers Co-op. It's the last one I've listed here in other resources. You can get it through Homeschool Buyers Co-op. It's very visual. ST stands for spatial temporal. Highly visual, highly conceptual. So if your kid needs more of that, go to Homeschool Buyers Co-op and take a look at that one. Right Start Math is a great choice for my first choice for focusing on conceptual-based skills at the elementary level. For some kids, Math-U-See is a good choice on the conceptual. Many dyslexic kids, though, don't do well with computation and might be better off not doing as much computation drill work and just switching to a calculator much sooner than Math-U-See does. So they might be good for the videos if you already own them, doing the hands-on. But I wouldn't waste too much time trying to do multiple digit multiplication, because how much times in life do you do that? We can talk more about that at some other point. Reflex Math is a good math fact program, but my cost for it is the same as yours at this point. So until I get 85 kids who want it, so it's like $35 for the year. But if you're at a level where you need maybe second, third, fourth grade level, it would maybe be worth investing in a year of Reflex Math. Our math coaches, Smart Apply, teaches a bunch of her program there, teaches a bunch of multiplication fact strategies. I would also recommend Singapore Math's Challenging Word Problems books. These are ones my dad's carried for years, and just doing 1 to 3 problems a day. And if they struggle with reading, read it to them, help them understand it. But 1 to 3 problems really going into understanding, and use a calculator if you need. This is not the point is application of the math skills, not computation at this point. For science concepts, MobyMax just added a 1st through 5th grade science. It's a few of you are using. We use primarily the Discovery Education textbook, which goes from kindergarten to 12th grade level. It's a multimedia textbook, minimal text, lots of video, lots of short video clips that convey the majority of the material. So I know one mom said, well, there's just not much there. I said, it's all in the videos and in the interactive virtual simulations and things like that. No, there's not much text. Many of your kids learn much better. I had one mom who said to me, you were so right that Annalise would do so much better with a video based. She said she's just finishing watching her little videos and telling me all sorts of little factoids that just read alouds with the family hadn't done before. So it wasn't just audio she needed. She also, the video really connected to her. So for some of our kids, that makes a huge difference. Maybe not how you learned, and maybe not how you think maybe learning supposed to be, but it makes a big difference. We are doing 2 group classes. We do have a few seats left in them for Earth and Space Science at both the 5th through 8th grade level and the 8th through 12th grade level. So that's our group offering this year for science. Social studies, we offer the Discover Education tech book. This year we're focusing on world geography and cultures for our middle school kids, and integrated liberal studies we're in 1400s to mid 1800s, and I weave that all in. If you're not doing social studies with us, I've recommended you consider Story of the World, Mystery of History, My Father's World, or Sunlight. And 3 of those, Story of the World, Mystery of History, and My Father's World, also bring in a fair number of hands-on activities connected to your social studies, which I strongly encourage. Last couple little things here briefly. Fast Forward works on underlying cognitive skills, memory, attention, processing speed, and sequencing. where it starts and then continues to build in as they get into the reading levels. If we have issues there, we need to think about that. Again, memory, attention, processing speed, and sequencing. Also, a bunch of listening skills built in there. We are going to be able to offer a pilot again on CogMed working memory, which is a specific range of cognitive skills, working memory and attention. I will actually, Saturday the 12th, I'm going to do a workshop the morning of Saturday the 12th about attention and memory. And then I'm going to overview for you what the CogMed offers. We're going to start that mid-October and run that through Thanksgiving. It's a 6-week program. So if that's something you're interested in, many of you indicated some interest on your registration form, so I'll get more out to you about that. There's no additional fee to take the workshop to learn more about it, learn more about working memory. If you choose to enroll in it, there's additional fee because it requires additional time. And then I want you to just think about, do I need to do anything about addressing listening skills and speaking skills of my child? If they have speech issues, by about age 7.5, if it's going to resolve developmentally, it will have resolved by then. And there are many things that if the child isn't developing at a typical pace, even as young as 2, can start with some early intervention with a speech and language therapist that can make a huge difference later on. So just think about that. I mentioned it there. Of course, there's also public speaking, which, you know, that's a whole different thing. But you might think about, do the kids need that? Probably a local homeschool co-op group is a better way to address that than an online class. And then think about, what are my kids doing that's developing their fine motor skills? Whether it's crafts, building models, drawing, sketching, whatever it may be. What are they doing to build fine motor skills? And then what are they doing to build their gross motor skills, so their big motor skills, which is being involved in physical activity. So they're not just sitting behind a computer screen all day. They're doing something to build motor skills. So there you go. If there are any questions, please type them in the chat. Those of you who are coming on for the, just coming on and joining us now for the Teaching All Kinds of Learners, we just had a few technical glitches that we got a little bit behind. If you have questions, please post them in the chat. Knitting would be a great fine motor skill. Addressing abstract thought for older kids, let's have that conversation another time, because it's not something that's addressed by one of the specific programs. That's a different conversation. I need to take a couple-minute break here. We're running a few minutes behind. I need to take that break. You will need some of the handouts you will benefit most from the next session, I should say, if you have some of the handouts that I sent last night in last night's email. So there's one that's if you've got a K2 kids, that you can assess some learning style things. Through that, there's another one for 3rd grade through adults. If your kids happen to be around, you might want to rope them in during part of this to have them actually answer some of those questions at the 3rd grade to adult level. The K2 is meant for parents to answer about your kid. There's a dispositions chart that we're going to look at. So those are a few, and then there's a learning style profile sheet that you probably would want to have one of those for each kid. So if you haven't yet printed it out, do so please. And if you have access to a printer, if C, but you're going to get more out of it if we take the time to print it. All right, let's go for 5 minutes again. So I'm going to start again at 11:40. Well, it's 11:35 here, 11:40 my time, which is wherever it is your time. So we're going to take a 5-minute break. Sorry, I dropped this all place. No. No. Before that. No. It's been fine since then. Didn't want to make you get off, but I'm like, that's probably taking more bandwidth than I have right now. Again, we're on a 5-minute break, so. I'm putting it back in. Yeah, we just heard too much airplane noise. And too much airplane and sirens and stuff. So I realized I hadn't eaten anything yet today. Yeah, so I just heated something, so I'm going to be eating while we do this a little bit. I'm not sure if that's the Laura who's on or not, Samuel. Not certain. There is a Laura on. It may well be. There's a Laura. That's not that one, but the other Laura may well be. Okay. So I'm gonna have to eat something while we talk because I'd intended for 15-minute breaks, but they got used up with technical issues. So we are here. So we are going to continue on now with we are going to be talking about teaching all kinds of learners and taking stock of, or not taking stock, that was the last session, your learning style profile. Let me screen share again. You again, like I mentioned earlier, you will want to have those handouts that I referred to. So the ones from last night's email, the learning style profile, the questionnaire for the K2 if you've got any kids that age, or the 3rd and above if you've got that age, and the dispositions chart. So I'm going to go back over the PowerPoint for a little bit here. All right, so this is just, again, checking in where we are. We've done homeschooling for outside the box learning. We've taken stock. And now you're up to teaching all kinds of learners. And we'll head on with the rest of the day coming out of this. I'm not going to go through it all that is again. We'll get there. Just kind of showing you where we are. So some of the things that we're going to talk about with teaching all kinds of learners. I mentioned this in the email that I sent. When did I send this? Last night. This material comes from a book. Oh, where's the book for the title? I'm sorry, I don't know where I put the book at the moment. Learning Styles, Your Child's Learning Styles, I believe it is. Excellent book if you're interested in learning more about this, about these different aspects of, addressing all these aspects of your kids. Highly recommend the book. It's about a $20 book. I gave the title in the email. And then I also gave a link if you want to do a more thorough learning style profile with them. I think with that link, I think it costs $15 a person. It will go a little more. It'll go more thorough, deeper than what's in the resources I shared with you in the PDFs. So some of the different aspects that we address, or we need to address and think about, that we may or may not think about, is what kind of environmental style does each student have? What are some of the basic things of their underlying disposition? When we think about learning styles, we often just think of their modality of visual, auditory, kinesthetic. There's far more to it than that. It's important to think in terms of what their talents are, which also some people refer to as the multiple intelligences. How are they smart? What are they strong in? And then what are their interests? And how can that guide and direct us? So I want to start off with the environmental style, because especially as you're getting started with a new school year, this is a great time if you need to make adjustments or changes here. You've never thought about this, to think about it. So do they do better learning earlier in the day? So take a look at your the profile sheet, and you might want to make notes also on the individual profile. So there's the questionnaire, and then there's the individual profile. As we talk about each of these sections, I just want you to go ahead and fill those out. If you need more time, you can do it later, but I want to talk through and have you start thinking about who's my kid. How does that need to inform what we're doing? So just because schools start at 8 o'clock, or some at ungodly hours like 7:30 in the morning, just because schools start super early, if that's not your family's clock, you don't have to start them. I had one family I was talking to, I think she may be on the call. I said, so realistically, what kind of time of day? She's like, we're at our best from 11 to 3. So we're starting their day at 10:30 because we need to, and some things go beyond it. And maybe it was 10 to 3. I forget what she said. It was 10 to 2, she said, I believe. And so we're starting at 10 and getting the core things in. And by the end of the day, their day is going to go a little bit longer to finish in what they need, because their kids also need a ton of breaks. We built those into her plan. She's one of my success coaching kids, so we spent more time together. And we built that into their plan, but by later in the day, they're doing things like the science and hands-on social studies things and things that are a little lighter, more low-key. But we're not starting super early because that's not how their brains are wired. Their bodies are wired. Mom said, nobody in the family. We're just not morning people. And I said, don't start school then. Now, if you have some kids who are early, some kids who are late, that makes for a long day for you. But it can really spread out, especially if you've got several kids. Don't make the one who's a late riser start at the same time as the other one. Get some one-on-one things done with the early riser, and then they'll be done with their day and petering out. And later in the day, you can spend more focused attention on the one who starts later. I have one of my families, the 2 high school girls do a good chunk of their work. They come to classes midday, work for a little while in the midday, but they do a good chunk of their work late at night after their little brothers go to bed. It works well for them. they function well at that time of day. So it's not at all uncommon that I'm seeing an assignment popping in from either of the two of those girls at 2 a.m. And I just know that that's how they're wired. Sorry, taking some bites to eat. Do they work better alone or together with other people? I don't like working as a part of a team. I'm very much more independent. I'm introverted. I need a lot of alone time. However, I do like to be near someone. So like when I was growing up, I would want to be out at the kitchen table, or mom was working in the kitchen or cooking or washing dishes or whatever. I didn't want to be off by myself. As I came to be a teenager, I tended to want to actually do my work alone in my room. When I was younger, I really wanted to be where everybody was. It distracted me. It wasn't the best environment for me, but it's what I felt like I needed. I'm very relational. And I also need to talk. So if I'm trying to process, though, somebody else talking is a problem. So especially if I'm overly tired, somebody else doing the talking, I'm having trouble. My mom would be like, I'm like, no, can you just stop for a few minutes? I can't have anything else coming in. But I'm very much a verbal processor, and I need to talk things out. Do they need snacks or not? Now, this should not be junk food snacks, but some kids need to munch. Some kids do better at regular scheduled times. Here's when we're going to have this. Here's what we're going to do this. Others do better with having things like carrots and whatever other healthy snacks you have for them available throughout the day. Encourage lots of water, by the way. That's good for the brain. Do they like it warm or cool? I have a friend, he's like, you can put more on. I can't take more off because he's always hot. So he's at this house, his temperature, and he's got lots of blankets around for anybody who needs them. But what temperature are we going to learn best? And having sweaters or blankets or whatever to accommodate for that. Fan if necessary, if somebody's more needing it cooler than the rest of the group. Do we learn better for bright or dark? My mom always wants to turn more light on. And I'm not necessarily always going to want that. Although I very much crave daylight. If it's a lamp, I don't necessarily need it to be particularly bright, but I want daylight. So I work outside a lot. That may or may not work for your kids, but I do. I sit in my living room because I've got light from 3 sides, plus a mirror across the 4th side, reflecting back light, because that works for me. It may be more convenient for you to have them sitting around, all sitting at a table, but many of our kids are not table kids. They might do better like this little boy on the laptop here, laying on the floor working on something. I had one boy, he would drape himself across 2 office chairs. His little bottom would be wiggling on the one chair. He would be laying across the front one, and his book would be, whatever he was working on, would be on the floor in front of him. That was frequent. Some things are better done sitting on the couch together. Some things, like handwriting practice, should be at a table, but it doesn't all need to be. So think about, you want to take a look at that chart and fill those out for your kids, whether you do it now or later, so you can be thinking about how to be intentional. Now, if you've got several kids and one's going to distract the other one, you might need a headset for anything that's going to be audio supported. I had one student who he really needed noise dampening headphones, so they got him shooting range headphones that just dampen any sound around him. Some kids do better with some quiet music playing, maybe just in their own headset, so it's not distracting other people. If visual distraction is a problem, you got lots going on, science fair display board or big cardboard box just around the area can be very helpful to help block off visually what else is going on, so they aren't seeing what everybody else is doing. It is important, though, that you still can keep an eye on them. Unless your kid has demonstrated that they are very good about using their time and staying on task when they're on their own, they should be somewhere you can keep an eye on them. If they are a more disciplined student who will consistently do their work, if they say they're doing their work and they're off in their room doing it, fine. Do be cautious on having computers in unsupervised spaces, though, because kids can get places on the internet you may not want them. So just be careful. Okay, modality. This is the visual, auditory, kinesthetic. I used to just think I got confused by this because I am very much of a verbal processor, but I don't take in as well just through listening. I take in best through reading, so that's more visual. I need to see it. I need to process it. But then my primary love language is physical touch. And so there's a tactile kinesthetic. And so I was confused by that. When I read one book, I forget, it's How Your Child is Smart. And it talked about it that we all have a preferred style for intake. For me, that's print. Or visually seeing it, so print or video. We then have a preferred processing style, which for me, that's talking it out, that's verbal, or taking notes. So for me, I'm either writing it down, which can also be a tactile kinesthetic, but it's more the word part of it for me. So talking it or writing. And then the other category typically tends to be something that touches us on a very deep level. So it touches us deeply, but it's not how we first take in or process information. So again, for me, that made sense. It was like, oh, that's my primary love language is touch. That makes so much sense to me. But physical activity and sports, athletics, choreography, any of that stuff always came very difficult to me. In my drawing, painting, those kind of skills, not so very, it's just not my strength. So see it in this way, help me understand it a little bit better, and realizing it's not just auditory, visual, kinesthetic, there's other aspects to it. And again, on your questionnaire, there's questions to help get at this. All right, so disposition. This is it's kind of our core drivers. And there's a chart of the various dispositions that I shared with you in your email. I come out as strongly producing and creating, thinking. I have secondary relating. I'm very much relational, but for me, it's not group work. And I'm not a performing, and I'm not so much an inventing. I'm much more creator than an inventor. So that's my strengths. Let me find the disposition chart for those of you who don't have it in front of you. One sec. So I'll stop sharing that one and share a different one. Sorry, the other. Not that one. I have so many tabs open, it's not even funny. And so many different windows open. Where did I put that? Oh, that ended up having to... Sorry, I'll find it here in a sec. Here it is. All right. So the disposition chart, I just want to spend just a little bit of time looking at together. So I'm going to screen share this screen instead. And part of it, I want to tell you about these things. So whether or not you end up right now going through these things. I want to teach you about them so you can know what you're looking at when you go through the profiles for your kids later. But I would be doing it while Beth Ellen's talking. That's how I function. So some of the things that would be characteristic of these different styles. So these don't line up quite perfectly, but these different topics here in this first column, they do actually go across the line here. So the self-image comes for a performer from being fun and being able to make people laugh. For a producer like myself, very much about being logical and practical. Inventor, they're asking questions, they're asking discoveries, relating, sensitive to other people's feelings. And then my secondary is the thinking, creating, and being creative and open to new things. That's part of being an entrepreneur, and that's part of my strength there. Learning. What are some characteristics of the learning approach that are beneficial for somebody who's got these different dominant dispositions? So for a performer, it needs to be fun and entertaining. So some of the online programs that have games and things like that built in really help. Producer, I memorize stuff well. I've got pretty good study habits, always have. An inventor is going to need to experiment, tinker, invent, explore, do tons of hands-on stuff. Relating, inspiring people needs to involve other people, and they need to feel special. And those of us who are thinkers, creators, it's my secondary, we need time to think quietly by ourselves. That's just part of who we are. We're going to need to think quietly to process. Performers' work style, they need stuff that lasts a short period of time. They're going to need much quicker. A producer needs a plan. They need projects that have a due date. Inventor needs to have all the time in the world they need for what they're doing, whenever that is. Now, fairness is far more important to someone who's a relator, so that's fair. And again, the thinker needs time for thinking and wondering and just pondering life. Info processing. Performers love games with winners and losers. They love competition. I would suggest as we're talking through these, or later, either one, that you circle the elements on each of these that are your kid. I mean, there's some questions on the profile sheet that'll help you, but I think circling which of these seem to be your kid as well will help you see patterns, as well as help you realize these are some of the things I need to incorporate to best serve my child. I did fine as a producer with workbook and drill style learning, which is good because the Christian school I went to was a Becca-based curriculum, and there was a lot of that. I am guessing many of our students in Wings to Soar are not producers by nature. That's why God had to develop the passion for the struggling learner in me, because that's not my style. Producers tend to thrive in traditional school environments, much more traditional. That's not the outside the box learners for most of Wings to Soar. Inventors like labs, field trips, hands-on learning, anything we can do that way. Relators tend to like small group projects, plays, role plays, any of that kind of stuff. Anything can be group oriented. And thinkers tend to like things where they can be more reflective. Collage, drawing, poetry about what they're studying is a way to reflect. Performers, they need to be able to walk around and move around. People like me or producers, we tend to be quiet, we listen, we follow the rules. Yes, we're the teacher's pet. We just make it easy for everybody. Inventors like to research. They don't tend to be as people with as many words. Sometimes they think talking about something is a waste of time. So let me do it. Let me get into it. Relators need to form friendships. Friends are very important. And your thinkers, creators like to observe and think about what they're seeing, make connections. I so relate as I'm seeing this chart again. I'm like, wow, yeah, I am so all over producer and thinking, creating. I am very minimally the other three. I'm just using myself as an example when I'm highlighting some things here because that's who I know. Your performers don't like schedules. They tend to be very impulsive. That doesn't mean they shouldn't have some scheduling. We need to help develop it, but they don't tend to like that. They might need some of that constraint, but they don't tend to like that. They want to be able to just spur of the moment. So you need to allow maybe a little more. Are we going to do this or this first for a performer? We're going to switch from here to here. I'm going to do it by the rules, do it by the schedule. Inventors get lost in their projects, so they might need bigger blocks of time to work on one subject and then another bigger block. So you may not get to every subject every day with an inventor. Make sure it's balanced over the course of the week. Schedules should be fair. That's, again, fairness is important to relators. And I totally get this. If I'm in creative mode, you can't schedule creativity. I'm in a more productive mode, I need rules and schedules and task lists and patterns and, here's what I'm going to do. But when I'm in more creative mode, that just needs to flow. Performers, rules, relax. Let's just let it happen as it happens. I would be one who would be tattletaling as a child on someone else because I want to help keep the rules and make sure everybody stays on track. And want to know what the consequences are, very clear, find it very unjust if I don't know what they are if I've broken a rule that I didn't know about. That's very offensive to me. But again, especially as a child. As far as an inventor is concerned, rules are fine as long as they don't interfere with their projects. For a relator, again, it's about people. Shouldn't hurt anyone. Make sure that whatever the rules are, as long as it's not going to hurt anybody, we're good. And we thinkers wonder about the meaning and the why behind the rule. You need to understand the why and the meaning. Performers tend to be doing lots of hands-on, putting things together, taking things apart. You probably have more appliances that have been taken apart than put back together. I am such a producer in this way. I'm a reader-writer, very much so. Inventors like to solve complex, complicated problems. Relators, talking, discussing, that to them is a very good use of their time. And in addition to my reading, writing, I do spend a fair amount of time thinking about the world and how to make things a better place as my creator thinking self. How do these different disposition styles, again, I'm sharing these with you so you can think about how they apply to your kid and your homeschooling and the choices you're going to make. So performers, they tend to think about now. And that's about the only time they're thinking about. They may need you as an adult to do a little bit more of that for them. If you are a dominant performer and or a dominant inventor, you may need someone else to help hold you accountable to making sure your homeschool plan works out and does what you need to do and achieves your kids' goals, what you need, because you don't tend to be strong in that respect yourself. So having somebody who's more of a producer and a relator help you stay on target, it can be helpful. Because we producers are responsible, we plan ahead, we want to know what's going to happen. Inventors, their primary goal is discovering invention, coming up with a new something, and figuring something out. For a relator, people are the most important thing. But if the plan needs to get set aside for people needs, that's more important. And the thinker is going to be wondering, what is more important? Is there something else that's more important than this schedule and the plan I'm supposed to be doing right now? So your performer's primary objective is going to be spontaneous. We producers like to have order and structure. An inventor wants to be smart and considered competent. Relator, to be caring for others and to feel special is really important. And thinkers, creators want to be contributing new ideas. Again, I totally see me as a producer and a thinker. different learning and work situations. So your performer, not so much a lecture style, immediate relevance, short, variety, action, challenge, games, manipulatives, competition, audiovisuals, hands-on. They're going to like a number of the online programs we use because we don't work in a lecture style. I mean, on a day like today when I'm doing parent workshops, I have to do more of that style. But many of the computer programs appeal to your performer. Now, producers, again, we tend to work well in more of a traditional setting. We like organized lectures, presentations, outlines, key points, memorizing facts, taking notes, knowing exactly what's expected, preparing ahead, designated study areas, quiet, routine. Again, we tend to thrive in a traditional setting. Now, if you have a producer at home, doesn't mean you can't still have them do great at homeschool. It's just you're not going to need as much of the outside the boxness for them. In fact, you may have to yank them outside of their box a little bit. Inventors like to debate. They like question sessions, like working on independent projects, not so fond of writing typically. They like to brainstorm with other sharp people, tend to like field trips, labs, sciencing, scientific exploration type things. Your relator wants it personalized. They need small group interaction. They want to discuss feelings, values, social issues, the future. They love cooperative assignments, harmonious atmosphere. All of that's really important to a relator. Some of our group classes can help serve some of that for some of your kids. If your kid's a strong relator, though, they're gonna need you to have something, whether it's youth groups, scouts, 4-H, co-op, something where they've got probably maybe even a couple somethings, a sports team, art class, something where they can be relational. Gotta. You might also want to think about for a relator getting together with a peer, another family, and at least sometimes doing some things together. Or swap kids. You know, we'll take these two today. You take those two, and get them together. Because they need that people interaction. And they're going to need you. If they don't have other kids, they're going to be relating with their siblings. They're going to be relating, whether it's in a structured, intentional way or not. So make sure you're intentional about giving them relational time. They need it. It's essential. They've got to feel special. They've got to feel cared for. Your thinker creator tends to like artistic, creative assignments, performing arts, writing, drawing, time to daydream and doodle, dialogue, integrating their work, integrating with music and drama. Now, your performer needs to be acknowledged. These are what they need to hear. They need to hear that they're entertaining, they're fun, they're playful, that side of them. Hearing that acknowledged is going to mean a lot to them. And what they're going to work for? They're going to work for something that's fun and new, something new. Rewards for a performer that are effective are free time, more choice in an activity, being allowed to perform and entertain for a group, some sort of verbal appreciation, encouragement for their performing qualities. So your producer, we want to acknowledge that we did a good job, we were organized, we were neat, we were productive. We need your approval, and we'll work for meeting a goal. So little good job notes, acknowledgement for our neatness, our punctuality, our getting a task done, verbal appreciation of the qualities that make us who we are as a producer. An inventor needs acknowledged for being clever, smart, having an idea, making a discovery. They want just acquiring intelligence and knowledge for its own sake will motivate an inventive type person. It's important to acknowledge their intelligence and use their contributions. So if they make a good idea, use it, incorporate it. That's a high praise to an inventor. Relators, they need to be noticed. They need to be acknowledged for that they noticed someone else and their needs, that they were kind, they were fair, they were thoughtful, all those relating skills that they're probably excellent at. They need to hear that. They need a chance to talk, and they don't like conflict. They want harmony. As long as we can keep things cool and everybody likes me and we're all good, that's a good motivator. Personal notes, pat on the back, a lot of personal attention. So if they need help on something, is it that they need help on the skill, or is it that they need your attention? And if it's not that they need help on the skill, they're just needing your attention, find ways you can give them your attention in a way other than having them be dependent, that they resort to just being needy about their academics because they want your time. Make sure they get personal attention in other ways, in a positive way, that it doesn't have to be because they need something that they get your attention. Give it to them proactively. They're probably less likely to need to lean into you and need you for help as often if they're getting their personal attention need met. Thinkers and creators, anytime they're creative, artistic, using their dreamer qualities, need acknowledgement for that. They need time alone. They need time to be allowed to work on creative projects. Those are things that are meaningful to them. Acknowledging their uniqueness, their creativity, showing off their work, their creative work, all very important for a thinker creator. And the last category here, I'm going to have to shrink this slightly in order to see the top and the... So some of the contributions a performer can add. They're going to bring fun, laughter, sense of excitement, adventure, playfulness, drama, flexibility, cleverness, wittiness, joking, willingness to take risks, sense of energy and outspokenness. All good? If you've got a performer, they were probably the class clown if they were in another situation. They can lighten things up, but again, when we're trying to focus and be more studious, can be a little more challenging sometimes, but they're fun to have around. Now, producers can bring to a group structure, rules, keeping traditions, custom, a sense of continuity, strong social responsibility. We're usually pretty good about remembering facts, bringing routine, order, procedures, methods, regularity, focus, thoroughness, and diligence. Again, teachers like us in the classroom, we're the natural student in a traditional setting. Your inventors tend to have interest in science, lots of technical know-how. They have a strong sense of discovery. They want efficiency in a task. They bring an enthusiasm for learning, as well as typically strong independence and problem solving. And they're going to speak directly and to the point. They're not going to waste a bunch of words. They're going to say what they need to say, and they're going to get to it. Now, your relator, as you might well expect, is going to bring warm atmosphere, emotional support for others, very people-centered point of view, group spirit, a sense of harmony, cooperation. They're good teammates, and they have some sort of sense of social mission that they want to accomplish. And last but not least, your thinkers. They're going to bring a creativity, sense of openness and wonderment and awe. They have appreciation for dreaming, designing, creating. They need quiet and alone time. And for them, beauty, nature, and aesthetics is very important to them. Yep. So I wanted to spend just a little more on time for those because most of us have at least two dominant areas. And that chart, the questionnaire you're going to fill out, will help you identify. I very clearly saw in those lists of the words across, it was like, oh, that one and that one for sure. There's just no question. And the others were like, not so much. This chart, though, really helps you see how to apply it. And if, as the parent, you take this seriously, and you take seriously what your kids' needs are in these different ways and what they need to be acknowledged for, you may think you've been giving praise. You've been giving positive affirmation. But if what you're affirming, and this goes along with the 5 love languages kind of principles, they need to hear what it is that's important to them. And so, I mean, 5 love languages are not the same as these, but what's important to that individual is what they need to hear the affirmation for. And the rewards that work for you might not work for them. What's going to be a motivator for them is not as important. So if you think about these and keep them, if you need to check something's not going smoothly, come back to your chart and see, how are we acknowledging who they are? That can be really important. All right, now I need to screen share a different screen. I need to go back over the PowerPoint. All right, hopefully I'm sharing that again. I think I am. I'm hearing microphone. Becky, is that you, maybe? Or maybe Mrs. Greaves got on with us, I'm not sure. So this is those dispositions we just spent some time talking about. Now, they call these talents, many of these overlap with the multiple intelligences, if you're familiar with that concept. All of us have different areas where we're stronger and weaker. And we need to be able to incorporate that into what we do and have it recognized. The whole profile of your kid, with all the different aspects, is important to keep in mind, because you can create a homeschool that is reflective of your kids' needs. You may say, I have 5 kids. Well, yes, you have 5, but you have 5, not 25, like in a classroom. Can you meet everybody's needs at all times? No. But the more you're intentional about being aware of what they are, the more likely we can help address multiple kids' needs. And you have more vested interest in it than any teacher would have. Even though your teachers probably love your kids, if they were in a classroom setting, I know I cared about all my kids. There's just so much you can do. So different talent areas. Find ways for them to shine in their talents and to use their talents. These are not exactly the same categories as the multiple intelligences, but they overlap. I think this list is actually more helpful. So music, math or logical reasoning, mechanical reasoning. I am so not talented here, but I really appreciate those who are. Word and language reasoning, that's definitely a strength in my world. Spatial, not me. Try to get put back after my dad and I do a homeschool conference together and try to get everything to fit back in the boxes. Just tell me which box it goes in, Dad. You know, and make it simple, like something like you put the books away. I can handle that. Body coordination, again, not my strength. So interactive of self, that's also also known as intrapersonal knowledge. So knowing yourself. Interact with others, that's interpersonal. They bring in 2 others. Interact with animals, interact with nature. Those are important to your student. It's important that they have contact. I know one family, one of the parents was very allergic, and so they could not have animals, but the kid really needed fur time. So going and volunteering at the Humane Society on at least a weekly basis was really important for that kid. Actually, it was a time period where Dad was going to take her to do that. Years ago, I was tutoring her. Dad ended up having an emergency surgery. I said, how about she and I go volunteer together? So like once a week after our tutoring, we would volunteer together. Anyhow, I know lots of my students seem to do well when there's their pet with them. There's frequently a kitty cat or a dog in the video when I'm teaching a class, or on a lap, or whatever. There's frequently one in my lap in the winter. Some really need to bring in humor. And others, things, life enhancement, that's things like decorating, making something pretty. The decor, the fashion is important. There's a few of those talents. Interests. What are their favorite subjects? What do they love? What interests? What they like to do? What do they care about? What they're passionate about? And involvement issues, it's like what kinds of activities in their community, their family, their world, their neighborhood do they want to be active and involved with? I had one student, I learned more about football that year with him, because I was his writing coach, than I've ever wanted to know. But I could get him to write in all the different genres I needed him to write about, as long as I let him write about different aspects of football. And he got to practice all sorts of things because we used his favorite subject. And he made so much more progress in his writing skills than we would have otherwise, because I let him do a lot of his stuff around a strong interest. So, in the previous workshop, I showed this slide briefly. I said come back to it. We need to embrace that uniqueness as an individual. Their talents, their gifts, their passions, their interests, their strengths, and their weaknesses is part of the whole package of who they are. Related to that, I encourage each student to have some sort of personal passion project, whatever it is that makes them click. It may be that they just love playing their instrument. It may be, I've got one girl who anything to do with animals, and she's developing her own pet care line, her own natural pet care line, and actually has arrangements with 3, like a friend who has a little local pet store to sell some of her products even. But that's her little passion project, and she's been anything about taking care of pets is her personal passion project. And now she's turned it into she's a senior this year, and she's turned it into a little mini business. Whatever it is, it's important that their personal passion project not be held as a carrot or a stick, that it's a reward that they get to work on that, or a punishment that it gets taken away. Because we all need areas to shine, especially if we struggle with learning. The fact that I was stressed and overwhelmed and I back-talked to you, Mom, shouldn't really take away from the fact that I still need time to explore my personal strength and my personal interest. That it's not a logical, direct connection. And probably what they need most is some time to work on their personal passion project. Now, that doesn't mean unlimited time. If their personal passion is Minecraft, it doesn't mean that they can spend unlimited time in Minecraft. Although if they're in my World Geography and Cultures class this year, they're actually going to get to do some of their geography work is going to happen in Minecraft. But that doesn't mean they get to spend unlimited time on the extra fun stuff until everything else is done and they've met their other responsibilities. That has to be negotiated with you. So whatever it is, I strongly encourage, because your personal passions, for some kids, personal passion project is going to last a week, and then they're on to something else. For others, it's a long-term interest. And for Miriam, it's a long-term theme in her life from very young. I mean, Miriam's a senior now. I've known her since she was 3. And she loved, they had ferrets at the time. She loved the ferrets. And so since as long as I've known her, she's loved animals. So for her, it's been a lifelong interest in just taking slightly different forms over life. Others, it's a couple weeks, couple months. Josh is very into airplanes and has been for as long as I can know. And I've known him for a long time. That's a lifelong passion. Takes different forms at different times. Others, it's short-term projects. They're interested in this, they get really into the whatever, and then they're on to a new passion. But while it's there, that's their passion. So strongly encourage you to build time in for that. You are homeschooling, so you can help individualize your attention in a way that we couldn't do in a public school setting, or in a private school setting for that matter. Make sure you do individualize that attention and use those disposition styles and what you've learned through this survey and through this workshop session to help